Welcome back. We've been reflecting on what's going on in Kings and Chronicles, and I just wanted to point out that, as you noticed when you read, the King's narrative begins with King David of Israel and ends with King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylonia. At the end of Samuel, David purchased this threshing floor from Araunah to build an altar to Yahweh. Early on in Kings, on that same site, his son Solomon builds a temple to Yahweh. That was foretold in 2 Samuel chapter 7, but by the end of the book of Kings, the temple of Yahweh is rubble and ash. You see, beginning with David and then culminating under Solomon, Israel reaches what might be called its golden age, but almost immediately after the death of Solomon, things seem to start falling apart. Well, really still in Solomon's lifetime. Once again, as we've seen many times before, God chooses the unexpected. I mean, think of it. Adonijah was David's eldest surviving son, and it was reasonable that he would assume that he was the crown prince. So, I guess it isn't surprising that he thought, well, Dad's not really in full control of his faculties, so I need to help out and assume the position. Did you sense the heightened emotion in chapter 1, verse 11, when the prophet Nathan comes to Bathsheba and asks, "Haven't you heard that Adonijah, the son of Haggith, has become king, and David, our Lord, doesn't know it?" Well, David announced that Solomon was to succeed him, and Saul was anointed by Zadok the priest and Nathan the prophet. And David's charge to his son was powerful. Do you remember? Be strong. Show yourself a man, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and keeping his statutes and his commandments, his rules, his testimonies, as it's written in the law of Moses, that you may prosper in all that you do, wherever you turn, that the Lord may establish his word that he spoke concerning me, saying, if your sons pay close attention to their way to walk before me in faithfulness with all their heart, with all their soul, you shall not lack a man to sit on the throne of Israel. Well, the narrators report that Solomon loved the Lord, walking in his statutes of David his father, except he sacrificed and made offerings at high places. In 1 Kings chapter 3 demonstrates Solomon's propensity to play the margins. It's true, Solomon's prayer for wisdom. We ask God, give your servant therefore an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. It's a potent prayer. But Solomon demonstrates that wisdom or discernment doesn't guarantee that a person will make wise choices and act accordingly. I mean, Saul seems to have wisely recruited leaders with whom he could share the governance of the land. The narrator reports in chapter 4, verse 21, that after some 400 years or more since Joshua, Solomon's realm matches the general outline given to Joshua back in Joshua 1:4. By chapter 6, the camera shifts to the pièce de résistance, the building of the temple that David had so longed to build. And we'll come back to this when we think through Chronicles. But powerful piece of narrative here. Then the narrative of chapters 9 and 10 are just filled with tension. It starts out with God's reiteration and reaffirmation of the promise to David, including the if then, but if not then. But then you read all the pomp and circumstance that follows, and I think it reminds the first audience of the warning that they had heard God give their forebears on the brink of entering into the land, that when they are in this land and prospering in the land flowing with milk and honey, don't forget God. Well, Solomon started out well. He reigned 40 years. But like too many, he didn't finish well. I mean, the glory and splendor of Solomon's administration turned out to be largely a facade. The narrator offers this tragic commentary in chapter 11, verse 4. Solomon's heart was not wholly devoted to the Lord his God as the heart of David his father had been. And then he expands in verse 5. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the detestable idol of the Ammonites. Solomon did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. He didn't follow the Lord fully, as David his father had done. You see, the affluence, the idolatry, the corruption infected not only Solomon, but many in the general population. And then jealousy exacerbated unrest. Sin results in disintegration. So, God sends the prophet Ahijah, who announces God's intention, first of all, with some performance art. He takes his brand new coat and he rips it into 12 pieces. He hands 10 of them to Jeroboam, and then he quotes Yahweh, saying that he was giving 10 tribes to Jeroboam. Remember back in Genesis 48-49, when Jacob blessed Ephraim? Is it a mere coincidence that Joshua was a descendant of Ephraim? And that being the case, is it surprising that the tribe of Ephraim enjoyed a degree of prominence during the period of the settlement and on through the period of the judges, so that when we get to this point in history, it's no surprise that when David becomes king of Judah for 7 years and then takes the Jebusite city and makes it the city of David and unites the tribes into a kingdom, the seat of power shifts from Ephraim to Judah. So there's got to be a sense of loss, at least in the tribal territory of Ephraim, and a spirit of jealousy among many there. And we see that coming to fruition as we get into these historical books. Think about it. We'll see you in a bit.